Next slide. We thank you, Parliament, for enacting the Government-Owned Enterprise Act, because this GOE is one that is now trying to reorganize all commercially viable state corporations. And you can see here there are 54 of them. In fact, I've seen the list as we were just reclassifying, it may go even up to 80 something, about 80 something. But we have state corporations which are 244 performing executive functions, others are doing regulatory functions, others are research institutions, others are referral hospitals and public universities and colleges. Then we have what we call government-linked entities like Safaricom, like Kenya Airways, and others that we have shareholding like Uchumi. And then we are members of international bodies. So out of that, you've seen with Kenya Power, for instance, what we did was we asked that we conform to SOE, and there was an election of new directors, where the board has independent directors, not government being too present in the boards. And even the chairman going forward will be appointed. So I think the CS is in the process of issuing a circular to implement the GOE Act. And this is also going to make a lot of changes. And then privatization. We have also undertaken privatization. We came in here to bring you the Privatization Act, which you have approved. And now the Commission, the Privatization Authority, is actually working on a plan, privatization plan for the next few years, including now ongoing Kenya pipeline. And I really don't want to indicate the benefits of privatization. I think most of you would know. Let me go to the next slide. Which is now the Infrastructure Fund and the Sovereign Wealth Fund. If some of you read the Kwanzaa Manifesto, that manifesto says that there shall be an infrastructure bank. In fact, it says an infrastructure fund will be established with initial capitalization from privatization proceeds, with a view to progressively reducing the financing of commercially viable infrastructure projects from the budget. So the key role of the fund is to mobilize long-term financing for major projects. So in the water, roads, energy, all of them that are commercially viable are candidates for being supported through the fund rather than the budget. And then we can create a fiscal space to support probably more on the education sector and others. Next slide. So we got approval from Cabinet for National Infrastructure Fund, and we also have said also we need to create a Sovereign Wealth Fund. This Sovereign Wealth Fund is important, and I'll come back to it on what it's going to be doing. But the fund has been established as a limited liability company. But we are now going through public participation in Parliament, because we brought it before you, and I know the Chair of Finance Committee and others have been through this. We know that Parliament will also give its input into this process, and to make sure that we have an institution that works. So through domestic resource mobilization, we want to monetize mature public assets to raise funding. We also want to democratize the ownership of our assets by allowing more Kenyans to own through the capital markets, and then deploy national savings appropriately. So let's go to the next slide. So we expect the fund to do the following. First, project financing. This fund will be dedicated to be a staple pool of fiscal resources that will support long-term financing of projects. Now every ministry is going through, we are going through pipeline of projects. Ministry of Roads, Water, Energy. Then we go through a process to determine what is it that is, which ones are candidates for support by the fund. We all want to fund to attract private capital, whether local or international. In fact, by a factor of 10. So if we raise $1 billion, we can make it $10 billion. And that is not debt. We have just created a saving, got others, and then attracted them into commercially viable projects. These are proven all over the world, and there are many examples. We want to, out of this, reduce fiscal pressure, because commercially viable entities that are still dependent on the budget can be removed to be supported by this fund. Then we can also focus on investments in critical revenue-generating sectors such as transport, rail, road, and energy, for instance, and dams and others. This will also enhance our capital markets, and there is a lot of vibrancy. By the way, I think I showed you the chart. Our capital market is doing very well, and you may have had the submissions from the stakeholders in the capital market that they are very happy with this process of bringing more opportunities into the capital markets. And then we are de-risking projects, because why carry out projects which are commercially viable through the, why don't you allow this to be done by private sector? And then we are saying all proceeds will be ring-fenced. It's not our intention, except if necessary, to use the money to support the budget, because you can see how that will work. We just spend, in 1 year it's gone, because the gap is so much. We would rather ring-fence these funds, perhaps maybe a small component, if it's necessary, to handle very critical areas of support, which will still come to you anyway, but it's our intention to really ring-fence this money. Next slide. We also got approval from the cabinet to establish a sovereign wealth fund, and the cabinet approved the policy. This is a fund that is supposed to prudently manage revenues from minerals and petroleum resources, even our dividends from public investments, and even what we get from privatization can also be part of this. We are anchoring this on what we call generational savings. You can see the debt, for instance. Debt has increased in just 10 years to where we are considered unsustainable. What are we doing to the future generations? How are we responsible to the future generation? They will be saying we made life difficult for them. And I think this is a proactive measure to try and see this. So this fund establishes a comprehensive framework for prudent management and investment of revenues from our mineral resources. And it has 3 objectives. One is that if we have shocks, we can use that money to intervene. Like now we have drought. That 9 billion that we have used could easily come from such a fund, because it has shocked the economy. Then you can also use a portion of this to support priority projects through the infrastructure fund. But lastly, intergenerational savings. We make sure that we preserve part of the resource wealth for the benefit of the future generations. So we ensure that the depletion of natural resources does not compromise long-term prosperity. So the objectives of the fund are, I think it's before you have already that bill, so I don't need to go through it. Next slide. Yes, so again, these are highlights. We are saying we'll have a stabilization component, we'll have an investment component, and we'll have a future generations component, what we call urithi component, so that we make sure, and this will come through you so that you create a regulatory framework, at least that this can govern the usage or the application of this fund. So, members, I thought this is the update we should give you on behalf of my cabinet secretary. But so that we don't blow our own trumpet, I wanted to present what others say about Kenya. First is Global Competitiveness Ranking, which was released last year in November. We were rated the top country in Africa. and number six globally. And how did we score? We scored this because of combination of rapid, what we call structural reforms we have undertaken, institutional reforms we have undertaken, and sustained policy execution, which have made us different from our peers in the region. And then we have also done macroeconomic management. I presented to you that situation of low inflation, stable exchange rate, low interest rates is not something you see in most countries in Africa. In fact, many are struggling with high inflation, weakening of the shilling, of their currencies, and so we've been rated well by IMD. It's called International Management Institute. The next is what we call PMI, which was released recently. Stanbic Bank, they have something, they have an index called Purchasing Managers Index, which reveals a robust turnaround on Kenya's private sector last year. The report shows that the private sector in Kenya maintained expansion, especially in November and December, overcoming earlier years because of protests that we had. The employment and purchasing power went up. So hiring by private sector hit a 6-year high. And purchasing activity increased as firms sought to build interventions. This is a reflection that economic activity is picking up. And output and sales. I also reported that business activity was supported by robust customer demand and new orders. Of course, the same report talks about outlook and risks and said despite this growth, strong growth, the report warns that rising costs could potentially fuel inflation with input price inflation accelerating. Then yesterday, you may have seen news that Moody's rating agency released a report which shows that we have been upgraded from CAA1 to B3. And they have also revised our outlook, showing that despite the challenges that are there, in their assessment, they see Kenya not likely to default because as finances are stable, they have seen our plan and they trust, and that is why there is an upgrade. Just in August last year, Standard & Poor also upgraded us. And we moved from B- to B with a stable outlook. This reflected that there is reduced near-term external liquidity risks. By the way, in 2022-23, I remember when I became the PS Treasurer, I was struggling even to raise money to pay debt. Our auctions were failing. You go to the auction, you don't get enough money. The international market was closed. Today, we go to the international market, and we've been there many times to do liability management. We get more than we need. Oversubscription. In fact, if I tell you, in 2024, February, we went to settle the $2 billion maturing debt, which was causing a lot of fear. We got $6.2 billion. We were only requiring 1.5. The next time we went, we got almost 5 point something billion. We needed only 1.5. The last time we went, we got almost $7 billion when we needed only 1.5. And now the market is open. We will also be doing. I can report to you that we have done a lot of liability management. We liability managed the 2024, which was a big risk. 2027, which was too high, is now sorted. 2028 is also stabilized now. We are looking at 2031, 2032 to smoothen so that we are certain as Treasury when we plan that we can be able to pay. Not like when we were not sure at that time that we could pay 2 billion. And this is why we don't want to be in a situation where we also borrow at one go, one bullet, that you require to pay so much money in one go. We want to plan it such that it's easy for anyone coming. I would like the one who replaces me in the future to find a better situation of managing finances of the country. So the last one is Fitch rating. Fitch affirmed its rating at B- with a stable outlook. So these ratings are crucial because they help us in our borrowing cost. Like now, we have a delay in DPO from World Bank. And I want to thank you, Parliament, because you have supported us also on a number of reforms. You have passed the conflict of interest bill. You have passed the, what we call the GOE bill. You have also passed the one for social protection. And many that are really, when you look at this is why we are being rated well. It's because of the work you have done as Parliament to pass the reforms. I still urge you to support us on the regulations that are before you so that we finish and we are able to access cheaper financing also. And then IMF is also on, and we have been able to get a lot of support. And our bilateral partners, we are doing well. I think all is well, and Honorable Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that we face a very difficult task of balancing, where we need to boost our revenues to protect critical spending in priority areas like education, like security, and meeting the heavy debt services that I have indicated, which now take almost 48%. So, because I will take up questions, Honorable Speaker, maybe I just end here and thank members for listening. I hope I have not loaded you with too much economics. I left a lot that I wanted to bring, but I just thought maybe if we have regular